Hello, welcome to the Hobby Hour with Dan and myself, Stuart. And this week we're going to be talking about commission painting as part of our main topic. But beforehand, we're going to have a good old hobby ramble and chatter. So, how have you been, Dan? How's things?
Yeah, really, really good, actually. It's a bit warm this evening. It's, in fact, very warm. I don't tend to do too well.
I need my towel to polish my head. Not sporting
there's
much
going to
hair.
be people who are in truly hot countries who are going to be laughing at us going, silly English, but it's hot. For us, it's hot.
It is.
And our houses are not built for being cool and airy. They're built to trap heat and retain it because, there's been an energy crisis. So it's not fun. But aside from that, it's been good. It's been busy. Other bits and pieces which we'll come to. How about yourself?
Yeah, same as you, really. Busy. Some good things recently. I had a holiday, but I'll talk about that in a bit later. Been managing some hobby, not loads, but a little bit of hobby. Most of it you see on the channel. But yeah, suffering with the heat this week, but I can't complain too much. It's humid. And I've got a 3-story townhouse and my office is on the top floor, so it gets hot up here. But so if you see sweat running down my very thin hair here, what's left of it, then do forgive me. I should have got my towel, but I think that would look worse, wouldn't it? A little bit of sweat is probably less nauseating than me every now and then I'm grabbing a towel out and giving my head a good mop. The joys of camera. So we've just recorded an episode of Out of the Frying Pan, and which is all audio, so we can put our silly faces at each other and it doesn't matter. But now we've got to remember that we are being recorded, and these videos will go on to the internet and people can see us. So no picking noses, no wiping sweaty heads. Probably forever. But yeah, I'm pretty good actually. With the trials and tribulations of life are ongoing, but they've not gotten too much worse, and I've had some good things as well, like I said, like holidays and things. So what are we going to talk about to start with? Should we talk about news? It's been quite a lot of news. Has it been 3 weeks since we did the last one? About 3 weeks, because I was overseas, so when we wanted to do it, maybe 3 and a bit weeks, because when we would have naturally recorded our episode 3, I was in Italy. We'll talk about that in a bit. Well, I'll talk about it and tell you all about my holiday. So it's been a bit of a break. So we covered Fest last time, but then not much since then. So what news has there been since then? It's all Leviathan at the moment, isn't it? It's all about 40k all over the gaming internet.
From a GW perspective,
obviously from a GW perspective, and thinking of kind of the big news out there. That's the only thing that's kind of really sort of standing out for me.
They've made a meal of it, certainly. We're now
have they?
2 days post pre-order window. To be fair, and I'll give GW their dues on this one. They have seemingly learnt from a lot of their previous mistakes. The queuing system appeared to work. It seemed to be available at least in a majority of places until yesterday.
Was it today? Wasn't it the first time? I don't know actually. So we're recording on Monday the 12th for those of you who are watching this, because this won't be out for a few days. So I popped on quite a few times over the weekend, just interested really how long the queue was, and whether they sold out of stock. After the Kill Team fiasco of like a 1 minute are out of stock, and I didn't think that would happen, but I was interested to see whether I needed to stay away from the Facebook groups or not for people moaning. And I've not seen any, but I'm not in any 40k groups. But I'm getting the impression that most people who wanted it would have been able to get it. And those that haven't are unfortunately the kind of people who maybe are waiting to the end of the month when they get paid and now have missed out. And that's tough. I've been there myself in the past, where something's released at a point in the month when you don't have the cash, and when you do, it's sold out, and that's tough. But I suppose we've known it's been coming for a while, and we kind of knew how much it was going to be for a while. So I do feel sorry for those people that just didn't quite have the cash, and now it's gone. But
all the models will be available later, though.
They will.
They released a load of the data cards for free today.
Yeah. I think they've done all right. My layman's assessment, because I've not bought it, I wasn't. We talked about this yesterday. I wasn't too tempted. There's always a moment, even though I don't play 40k, where I think I used to, and I enjoyed it when I was younger. Oh, it's a nice shiny box, and those new Tyranids look fantastic. But I didn't get the FOMO thing that made me panic and click. Oh, I'll make some videos out of this. I was good, and I don't regret not doing it. But they seem to be all right if they keep it in stock for the best part of 2 days. There'll still be independents. There will still be stores that have it, though probably not many in the stores.
I think the actual retail location, it must be pretty solid. I was in my local in Peterborough. The manager, Marcus, shout out to you if you're watching, mate. Really lovely guy. He was saying he's probably going to get a reasonable allocation. Obviously, I think this is basically what was available direct to web and then through certain trade.
Yeah.
There might be more. They might do more of the weekend. They might have held some back. It's a 2-week window, isn't it? So
yeah, it does. It does say sold out online. Doesn't say temporarily out of stock. I think at this stage, and I know that
you never know.
The pre-orders, you got the free battle boards, didn't you? And they went out of stock before the game did. As I said, I popped back a few times more out of semi-professional interest, so to speak, for this podcast and
morbid curiosity.
Work a little. Yeah, and the morbid curiosity as well. I think I've seen a couple of negative posts, but only about the price of it, not about the availability yet. And I disagree.
A lot of plastic for 150 quid.
That's the thing. I disagree. Yes, £150 is an awful lot of money, and if you play other game systems, it doesn't compare. So GW is expensive. I do not disagree with that for one moment. But if you add up the cost of what all that plastic will be individually as separate boxes, it is a huge saving. And the other thing is, this isn't the 40k starter. This is their 40k launch set.
Yes.
It's the same with Indominus, and I didn't get it last time with Indominus. I thought, well, hang on a minute, how can they sell out the new thing? But this is the way they're doing it. This is the launch thing, and then what will follow, with no doubt, will be a couple of, maybe even 3, but definitely I imagine 2 tiered starters. One aimed at kids, where you got about 10 models and a get you by booklet and a couple of things in, and then there'll be the one that's kind of your 85 quidish kind of standard starter. So those will come. My hope is that they follow quite quickly. So for those who want to play 10th edition and didn't have the money to get this set, can get themselves playing 10th edition, and I hope the hardback rule book comes out soon. So hopefully after the 2-week pre-order window, it's not long afterwards for those who are interested. If that rolls on month after month, if that goes on for 6 or 8 weeks or something before those things are out, I do feel a bit for those people who really excited, love 40k, want to do it, but couldn't afford the 150 quid and or missed out. So hopefully those things follow. But yeah, like I said, value seems to be great for all of those miniatures. And if it's not for you and you're not interested in those armies or can't afford that, I hope that the actual starters, when they come out, are affordable and not too far off for people.
Well, all the cards are free. The rules are free. They've made it easier than ever to get into. I mean, I wouldn't normally be jumping up and down and singing the praises of 40k, because no. But they seem to have done a really nice job of this. The only thing I'm really hoping is, admittedly, the way they do their tooling now in order to maximize the number of models on the sprue to give us these huge sets is great. But the way they combine some stuff meant that for instance, if you wanted some of the characters out of the Indomitus set, you had to buy it as one with all the Blade Guard and stuff on it, and it was, if I remember rightly, a pretty ludicrous price for one sprue that potentially only want 1 or 2 models off.
I see.
So hopefully they've done a better job of that. I mean, they're not obligated to, I suppose.
It's a difficult balance then for them, isn't it? So they can give you more of a offering at launch because of this I mean, I'm guessing that they're not combining Marines and Tyranids on the same sprue. We've had that in the past with some games, and that becomes almost... Was Island of Blood for Warhammer like that? I can't remember now. I think it was. So that makes it hard for them to...
High Elves on the same sprue.
So, and they probably want to bring back those sculpts, but how do they do that? And there's even rumours about those sculpts coming back, and that might be why the Skaven weapons teams, the most recent sculpts, aren't the ones that are available for AOS, because they're part of that sprue rather than being available separately. So there is swings and roundabouts with that. So we will see. To be fair, the Marines look great, but also they look like Marines to me.
Marines.
There's a lot of them already. They don't seem new. I was talking to you about this, wasn't I, Dan? So I'm a sucker for a starter set, and I played Rogue Trader, and I played second edition 40k as well, and then I dabbled like 2 games of fifth edition, I think. And if there was something that sort of was more nostalgic for me, I may have been sucked into it. And the Tyrannies looked amazing. And if it wasn't Ultramarines, it was something else, or if it was Blood Angels, or it was maybe Dark Angels or Death Guard kind of not Death Guard, Deathwing kind of thing. So it harked back to Space Hulk or something that pulled at my nostalgia heartstrings or something. I may have gone, I'm panic bought it.
With that Terminated Librarian, they missed the trick with the old Dark Millennium front cover.
Yes.
Without the old card thing for second edition.
Yes. So I didn't want to buy it, but as soon as I'm not a fan, I get why they stick to Ultramarines, but it just leaves me a bit cold. I can appreciate the sculpts are lovely, but it just didn't excite me, and there's nothing about it that made me really desperately want to buy in. But I will enjoy seeing everyone's painted miniatures. I might get to paint some for work, so I, as and when I do, it will be fun to do. But overall I think they've done all right, and hopefully if they've cleared that backlog of plastic that's taken up all the space in their warehouses, and that they've prepared for some of the other releases that are a bit stuck, and some of the other models that seem to be out of stock, that I can guess may well be down to how much space 40k Leviathan was taking up, how much bandwidth from their business that released, their biggest ever releases, isn't it? Every time they release a new 40k, it's going to be their biggest thing ever, I imagine. That Saturday was their biggest sales ever. Seeing the way businesses grow year on year, I can imagine there was nothing as big as that. So they probably made the most money in sales. Whether it's profit, I don't know, but in terms of sales, imagine they've had their biggest weekend ever. So hopefully now they can recover from that, and those poor people in the warehouses and all those new systems and stuff start getting some of the more core items more readily back on the shelves. So there's less moaning on the internet. What other news have you got? Any news that springs to mind for since we've last? I've got one other thing, but I don't want to jump straight into it. So because it's old world related, so I thought we can have something other than just talking about that. Have you got anything that sprung to mind for you?
Not in the last couple of weeks, to be honest with you. I don't think there's anything particularly been on the horizon. No.
I mean, there's been quite a lot of historical stuff, but I don't want to turn this into kind of like a news section where I just list what miniatures historical companies have released. The Plastic Crack podcast do a pretty good job of that each Monday, and it'll be a little bit more current than we do it sporadically. So apologies to you guys who are watching this that aren't him of GW minded. I talked about 40k there just because it was probably the biggest news in wargaming, but I'm not going to list some other things. But sorry, Dan, you were wanted to come in with.
Well, no, I was just saying we've arranged a game. We're going to both be at CrackCon.
We are, yes, and
we're going to play some Flames of War. We're going to play North Africa.
We are,
because I just can't get away from them Nazis. I just can't. You're not sending me, and you're making me play with them.
I have not sent you any 15mm Nazis. I sent you a tank, just as a painting project. That tank is a museum piece. It's empty. There are absolutely as many Nazis in that as there are in the Tiger tanks at Bovington Tank Museum. You
can't really see it in the picture. There's a tiny little Nazi in there.
Is there?
You did send me a Nazi.
Oh, he's just a reenactor. He's just a reenactor. I'm looking forward to seeing you do a little diorama with that. That's going to be cool to see. But I did offer you some Italians. I've offered you some free Italians, but you don't want them, or you yet to decide you want them.
Splitting hairs, splitting fascists, I suppose.
I'm sure they weren't all fascists. The Italians didn't really want to be there, a lot of them. I'm not sending you any black.
Well, who did by that point in the war? Who wanted to be anywhere?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was the beginning of the end at that point. But anyway, yes, we are. We're both attending CrackCon this year. I have to book my hotel, so I need to do that before I forget. There's no rooms left. You aren't staying the night, are you? But you're down for the
day.
I can't miss the curry and the beers. And then I originally was going to do a big epic game that then changed into a epic point and shot game. But out of the Miller, who was interested, but he's doing something else, and then two of the other people who were going to be coming along to play that game didn't get tickets, and I didn't originally. I was busy dealing with stuff, and Martin had said, quick, get on there and get one. So I got one of the last ones, only because I was reminded. So I nearly didn't make it either, but that was out of my control at the time. But yeah, it's looking forward to it. So we're going to play Alid and Benjamin. Well, Benjamin and I are playing you and Alid, and we're having a North African game of Flames of War. So nothing to do with what I've already painted for Flames of War, but it was fun to start a new project, and it's a fairly manageable project as opposed to painting massive epic armies to get them ready in time. It's not something that I would lose an awful lot of sleep or hair. I can't afford to lose any more hair over before we get to October. So plenty. Even I did nothing, and then 2 weeks beforehand, I still had to paint everything I probably could do. But that's not my intention. We'll come back to that later when we talk about hobby. So other news. I suppose I am going to keep talking about the old world because I'm excited about it. Since we last recorded the news on the factions, that wasn't out, was it? So that's fairly big news.
The original version or the Redux version?
Oh, what you mean when they changed it from good and evil to just...
Yeah, didn't the Camry players get a little bit upset?
When they were called evil, yeah, I didn't even clock that.
They're
to start
walking
with.
skeletons.
Wow,
Since Jason and the Argonauts, they've never been a good thing.
No, I suppose they're not sentient, are they? So it's that kind of how much of a despot are the Tomb Kings any more than any of the others? I don't think anyone's particularly good, are they? To be honest,
are we moralising on indentured servitude at this point?
We are. Are the Wood Elves good? I would argue that they're a little bit messed up, aren't they? They're a little bit.
I've seen Ferngale. I know what they're suffering. It's fine. You watched Avatar, right?
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the new one, which I've been told is awful.
They just put that on Disney, didn't they?
Is it on Disney?
It's just gone on.
I'll watch it with Jacob.
I'll watch
Jacob will like the original, so I will watch it with him at some point. But yeah, they've had one update since the news at Fest from the old world, and they've basically announced which factions are being covered, and there's a legacy list. So those of you who aren't following it, some factions will have free rules. Sounds like PDF based, but they'll have free rules at the launch of the game, but they're not essentially supported to start with. So they're focused on a few sort of core factions, and those four they were originally said as good, but let's just say on one side we have Empire, we have Britannia, we have High Elves, we have Wood Elves and Dwarves. That's it, isn't it? From the good side. I've not missed anyone else. And then from the naughty side, we have Chaos Warriors, Chaos Beastmen, Orcs and Goblins, and Khemri. And that was it. So though the other factions, so your Dark Elves, your Demons, your Lizardmen, your Skaven,
Orcs and Goblins.
Orcs and Goblins are covered. They're on the main list.
Oh yeah, sorry, they're on the main list.
Skaven, your Ogres.
Yes, Ogre Kingdoms.
Have I missed anyone else? It may well be. People are shouting. I've prepared so much I don't have the list in front of me. But those are becoming legacy factions, so they're what I've described as sort of covered by a PDF. So they'll all be playable at launch. If you've got old armies, the idea is you'll be able to play your stuff. But it looks like, from what they've said, that there's going to be sort of like a campaign setting to start with, which is based in the old world, funnily enough, and maybe they've talked about a campaign around the what are they called, Border Princes, which I quite like. I quite like that idea. So it's so I think you're going to see a lot of human versus human stuff. So different barons and knights for Britannia, and the same for Empire. Some kind of incursion of Tomb Kings. That's where you get your undead stuff, but no vampires. There we go. That was another one.
Even though Bloodkeep was in there.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions. but we're a long way off yet.
No,
But
they're having a kip at the minute
they are
because
having
the
a
first
kip.
Vampire Wars having a kip.
And the demons aren't there because the winds of chaos aren't that strong at the moment. So chaos is there, but then the demons aren't in the force. So it can all make sense. They're obviously expanding on lore that was just a paragraph or two as part of a big fantasy rule book beforehand. So some people are saying, "Oh, this doesn't." They're retconning stuff, and you're like, they're retconning like 3 lines in a book. Just let them do it. There's no way. It's very hard to expand upon histories that literally don't exist apart from a paragraph that's used as fluff text, isn't it? Really, and so people get upset about it.
You need that meme up. Was it the pirate with the noose first time? As if GW haven't done this before.
Yeah. I'm fully behind what they're doing. I would have loved to seen all the factions there. I think it's a shame that some aren't. It's a shame that Skaven aren't there. I think they're quite a unique prospect, Skaven. So those are disappointing. I'm trying to think about
lore, because it's not long after Nagash had a bit of a scrap with them.
Yeah,
I believe
Skaven.
They could be licking their wounds, squirting the musk of fear.
It's squirting. I've heard that a lot recently because I've been listening to more Gotrek and Felix. But those of you who don't know, Skaven aren't supposed to be known fully in the old world anyway. They're kind of almost like a rumor, so we know they exist because we're godlike creatures as the controllers of the armies, but the average lay person in the old world, some people believe in Skaven, some people don't, and they're kind of almost like a bogeyman kind of thing. And I think at the moment they're very much supposed to be in retreat and in hiding and stuff like that. So but they've been like that for half the lore anyway, and they had armies back in other editions. You can argue it either way. I'm not going to get too exercised about it, and I get why they're doing what they're doing. It's a specialist game now. It's not a main studio release, so they got a smaller team and smaller resources, and they're bringing back older models, etc., etc. So for me, it makes an awful lot of sense that they will focus on a smaller amount. It's a shame. I'd have loved a full release, and I'm sure that the people designing it would have loved to release more if they had the time and the manpower and the money to do it. This is my assumptions. I don't know this for certain, but I think it makes sense. And we talked a little bit in the previous shows, didn't we, about who's running the game and what parallels we might be able to draw from other games they run and from Specialist Design Studio, and that Middle-earth was a good kind of example of how a game can exist on older miniatures and some newer sculpts and how it's supported, and it looks like that kind of thing could still be on track. So I'm excited for what they do, and hopefully there's a second run of books because it's really, really popular, and they advance the timeline and they bring some of these other factions back into it. And there's definitely room for that because they talked about the timeline being set just before a big chaos invasion. So that would suggest to me if they exactly. So if they move on the timeline, which they do, GW do that now. Back in the days when I first played Fantasy, the timeline never changed. Whereas now they do move that. They've done it with 40k and they've done it with AOS, so they do move the timeline forward now. So I would guess that if the old world is successful and does well, that there will be a plan in a few years' time to actually move on to this big event that they're talking about that we're leading up to. Sounds like we're anything from 10 to 50 years away from it, building up to it, and then that would be the perfect excuse to maybe have a second edition if it does really well, or at least do other campaign books and bring it back on. So I think we've got a lot to look forward to.
The Von Carsteins going for Sylvania and stuff like that, they'd be very cool.
Yep.
There's no surprise where my allegiances lie on that one.
No, you like your
somewhat aggrieved that the vampires aren't in, but
yeah, but I suppose this is where you could probably. Fantasy was always a brilliant place for people really, really pushing the boat out in terms of hobby. More so, you'll hear the Heresy guys talk about what they do, and they're very good with their hobby. But I remember back in the 7th and 8th Ed days, people would fit their themes. So you may well have you might well have an Empire army, but it's all completely themed with something else. I'm pretty sure you'd be able to do some kind of Blood Knight themed Bretonnian army. But they're only just just changing maybe, so you don't need the kind of the vampirish rules with it, and you could model it all.
All got sunglasses on.
Yeah, sunglasses. They got the always have their
Led
their
by a
visor
girl with a
down on their
saxophone,
I think there's room for that kind of stuff. And one of the places on the map, I've forgotten about this now because I sent you a message about it when I was in an airport, I think,
Yes.
saying this bit on the map looks like one of the people mentioned is a forerunner for one of the vampire counts. So it sounds like they're fun little tidbits there that they're leaving themselves.
Blood dragons.
The blood dragons, exactly. So that might not be the blood dragons now, but if that person's on the map, that's showing you what they could do in the future and how they might bring vampire counts back into it. And then there'll be someone that does a Toonkins army that's vampire counts themed in the way it looks and things as well. And you could paint your dry skeletons as wet skeletons, couldn't you? You could.
We'll see, because especially the base change fitting AOS models to it isn't the worst idea in the world. And as it turns out, see if I can try and extricate this without making too much of a mess.
Nice. Oh, lovely set.
Completely, other than the shrink wrap coming off it, I haven't even touched it.
Nice. So,
and just to aggrieve people further, I got it when it was released.
One of the few people.
Touched it. After all that problem, people are getting hold of it, and I've not touched it, which goes to show GW FOMO.
I reckon there's a lot of those sets that are untouched for similar reasons. You love your VC. I know they've not got an up to date list. It's hard for me because my favourite armies are covered in the normal thing. Dwarves and Empire are always the main thing. I'm obviously doing Bretonnians at the moment because it was I know it's going to be a launch army, but also it was something I wanted to do and had towards the end of 8th. I was never much of an evil player, but I still want to do a Skaven army. And those new lizards are so beautiful that it would tempt me to do a lizard army, and having legacy rules wouldn't necessarily put me off, because they'll still work, and I can't imagine me being a tournament player and I get it, if they have events for this, at launch they'll be fine. 2 years down the road, once they've released some special rules and books, the people with legacy armies are probably going to suffer a little bit, but that won't affect me. So if my favourite army was VC right now, I'd still be playing a VC army and just thinking, hey, my army book's free. I'm just
if I had the
going
models,
for it.
It's just obtaining some of the models that I'd want. Same thing, Dark Elves. They're my two favourites, Vampire Counts and Dark Elves. And
there's a lot of Dark Elves still available to buy, and there's a lot of VC stuff.
So
I don't know whether that will change, because I've got the impression that with all the new Cities of Sigmar stuff that's been teased, I would wonder if a lot of the Empire stuff is going to come off and ready to be re-released for this launch. What I don't know, and they haven't made it clear yet, is whether the legacy armies will have their old miniatures re-released like the other factions, because that could potentially leave some. Most things will be covered. So your Lizardmen have got a full range in AOS, you'll be fine. And not only are they a full range, they're also beautiful brand new models. Skaven have got a full enough range in AOS, so you've got no problem there. So if you're a Skaven or a Lizardmen player, aside from not having new rules, your miniatures are probably better than some of the armies that are going to have new rules but still have older miniatures than you. So there's swings and roundabouts with it. Ogres are pretty well covered. So it's Dark Elves, I think, is a question, because you don't know what.
Yeah, because most of the stuff's dropped out now.
Yeah.
I mean, was it Daughters of Cain?
Yeah, so they're all covered.
So Witch Elves and stuff's covered. The Cauldron of Blood.
So you know what? Someone who knows Dark Elves well might be better than me answering this, but I think there's quite a lot covered in the Cities of Sigmar. I
don't know if all the monsters are still in it. I don't know if you still get the Dark Elf stick bolt thrower, but you could convert them from the High Elf.
You could convert it.
Whatever they're called. Yeah. Elves.
I think
Cowmen.
You know what? I think a lot of things can be covered, and I just hope that that they keep the dark. Well, saying that, why would they remove them from Cities of Sigmar unless they completely turn Cities of Sigmar just into humans now, which they could do, and that wouldn't be unlike GW to do that. But if they don't, and they're just for updating the human range, then I think basically, if you're a Chaos Dwarf player, you're a little bit screwed. But everyone else is going to pretty much be able to make their armies or get the bulk of it. But anyway, we're talking too long about the old world because I could talk about it all night. But that's the news on that one. So if you haven't come across that, you are thinking of dusting off your old armies to play, give it a go. You'll be able to play anything. Is the short answer. If you wanted to collect something new, you're probably better off picking something that's going to have the new rules for it. So what else have you been up to then, Dan? How's your hobby been since we last recorded?
Well, I had an event to run, which, as you say, we've just recorded and out of the frying pan. That is now, should be by the point this comes out, will be available for people to get hold of, where I talk more in depth on what went on with that. So we won't retread that ground. Somewhere in the vicinity of the screen should now be a picture of the Amon Hen. I painted up the full job one.
Yep.
Really, really, really pretty. Didn't take me that long. It took me, it was a quarter of a week, but I think it was only about 7 hours or so to paint, start to finish.
It was awesome. So, it's really awesome.
Thank you. It came together quite well. Tried out some new techniques, tried out some new paints, which was fun. It's always nice to try new things. A little bit nerve-wracking on one or two occasions. Put some enamel paints on it when I really should have varnished it in between stages, but I only had enough gloss varnish left to do it once, so I needed to do it after the enamels but before the oils. So trying to remove some of the enamels without taking the paint off. Stressful, but all done. It all looked good. Happy with that. So yeah, prep for that basically. Bought some plinths finally so I can put Frodo, the one I painted a little while ago, on his plinth. Been doing some reading. Picked up, because you kind of got me back interested in the old world stuff. Some people may know what this is.
So cool.
Maybe the wrong way around for some people. It's Liber Necris. Some of John Blanche's absolute finest in here. Let's see if I can find that picture I showed you earlier. It is super, super cool. There it is. Some of this old school stuff.
That's awesome. Such a lovely book.
This is why I love vampire counts and stuff. And then some other bits and pieces. Some of these are sort of limiteds or Black Library pieces. This was Darkness Rising. This was the Second Great War of Chaos. So this was 7th edition, I think.
Was it Storm of Chaos or was it Second Great? If it's Storm of Chaos, it's been retconned.
Storm of Chaos.
That was 6th, wasn't it? That was in 6th edition, yes. I think.
Yeah, oh god. I don't even know what year it was this was done. A while ago, I would say. The fact it was only 15 quid probably tells you enough for that.
I'm going to guess something around 2003, 4.
Oh, it's in the front. 2005.
2005 just says to me, England's first win back in the Ashes forever. That defines 2005 for me. Is cricket. But awesome books. Awesome books. Yeah. I'm jealous.
This one's 06. But yeah, so I've kept a few things here and there from my time playing Fantasy Battle, mostly fiction books like that. So I've got some of the old books like Defenders of All, Sons of Illyrian, the Graham McNeil High Elf ones. They were awesome. Really, really good books. Really, really good depiction of Slaneshi Chaos Warlord in that. Really cool with Marathi. And then some great books out there. I really want to read the Time of Legend stuff again. So for anyone who's not read those,
they are good.
They're usually sort of trilogies of books, and it was the first one they did was Sigmar. They did Nagash.
I've got the Sigmar.
The Elf one was amazing. I still think was it Shadow King, the second book they did in the series. I think it was Gav Thorpe as well. Which was Gav Thorpe, yeah. That's probably one of the best elf books I've ever read. And the the War of Judgment, the book they did for that was really good as well. Yeah, there's some great books.
But I love the Graham McNeil Sigmar series. It's a real kind of origin story, isn't it? It's the first one they did, and it's the old world very, very differently, right? From sort of almost primitive barbarians to the beginnings of civilization. And
Blackfire Pass and all that stuff. Yeah.
and if you're someone who hasn't read much Warhammer fiction, because you regard it to be, and without, and quite fairly, some of it a little bit too easy to read sometimes, or so easy to read that it's not easy to read. They're not well enough developed characters and things. There's a lot I've put down, but I started to read because you think, oh, that topic looks fun. It's just not good. The Graham McNeil series that I'm talking about, the Sigmar series, is up there with the quality of the Warhammer Heresy books. So if you're someone that's read those, they are, I'd say, a superior quality in terms of their output. Very, very good. I wish more were like that. I hope we get some for the old world. That would be interesting. And hopefully if they do, they're good. Yeah, nice. Well, we didn't talk about your event, but you hinted at it there. For those of you that aren't going to go and watch or listen to Out of the Frying Pan, you ran a Middle-earth event, didn't you? I
did.
As part of Greetings of the Warp.
Yeah, which had Warhammer on Saturday, playing 8th edition.
So it's Greetings of the Warp. I'm going to do this for you because you're not. Greetings of the Warp, who run events in the Midlands, and along with Cult of Paint hosted this event, and Greetings of the Warp have done loads of heresy events and things in the past. So it's a big event over a weekend where Cult of Paint were doing painting stuff. Andy Warder was there doing painting.
Yes.
Tuition, and then was there Adeptus Titanicus on the Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah, Adeptus Titanicus and Warhammer Fantasy on Saturday, and Middle-earth and Necromunda on Sunday.
Very good stuff. So it's all aimed at the specialist design studio list of games kind of thing, and Dan ran the Middle-earth stuff. So if you want to hear more about that, go and listen to Out the Frying Pan. He'll take you through to the event. Sounds pretty cool thing to do. So other than that, what's your hobby wise? What you've been painting? Not so much, apart from your Ammonhen, wasn't it? You've had a busy time at work.
Unfortunately. I've got some bits on the block. The Battle Streams of Middle-earth meetup's coming. There's always tokens for that are given to everyone who attends. It's not much of a spoiler, but I've started these, working on them now. So they're sat there to be put the gold on, and that's going to be this week.
Nice.
And then I'm going to try and finish the WARG for Gothmog.
Nice.
They're my upcoming plans, so I can get them based up and try and take them to the meetup.
Cool.
Because my original army idea just not happening. Just not had time.
Run out of time. Yeah, I know the feeling. My army plans are all there waiting to go, but I keep painting the odd single miniature. Which is probably what I've been doing. I think how many videos have I had out since the last Hobby Hour? I can probably check nice and smoothly on my phone now. So since we put out the last Hobby Hour, if I bring up my content list, I'll be able to work out what I did. So I did a couple of Blood Red Skies things. So Paul Sawyer Warlord Games had sent me some a little while ago. And so I had agreed to do that. I wanted to anyway, but I did some videos for Blood Red Skies a few months back, and he said, would you like to do another video? Would you like? Is there anything I can send you that you can do a video for? And I had the Midway starter set already. I said, I'm planning to do something about this. He said, well, there's a new book out soon, so I can send you something. And he sent me a couple of aces, a couple of free planes. So I did a couple of videos based around that one, including sort of a bit of a painting tutorial. And then other than that, it's been more old world painting tutorials, which seem to be going down really well. People are requesting miniatures to do. So I did a Night Goblin. I did a Bretonnian Knight of the Realm, which is kind of part painting tutorial, but also part of my ongoing project. And then I did a test stand for Flames of War for the North African British. So as part of our game for CrackCon, so I started a series of videos on that and painted a stand. And then I've just finished last night editing, ready to go out in this week. It'll be out before this, actually. My series of old world painting tutorials, and are all kind of individual warrior models rather than any one special. And it's an Empire troop, so Free State. Free State is the AOS one, actually, isn't it? Empire. Free. I'm mixing the two up. Free Guild is the AOS version, and State Troop is the fantasy version. So I've done one of those. So still doing bits of painting. I've had a couple of mini breaks. I've been away in the camper van first couple of days. We bought a camper van this year for people that don't know, which will be everyone watching this. Bought a VW camper van, and we had our first sort of couple of nights away in it, which we managed to forget to plug in properly and kill a battery, but that was good fun. And we went to Rome for a few days as a family. So 4 days in Italy with a 4-year-old and 8-year-old. We did a lot of walking and a lot of carrying a 4-year-old, but it was worth it. Saw some amazing things in Rome, all the things you can imagine seeing in Rome, and then we got a train and went to see Pompeii as well, which was fantastic. We were going to go up Vesuvius and Heraklion, but the kids didn't have the stamina for that, so Emma and I are going to have to return in the future when we're a bit older and revisit those things. And then not go for a wander around Naples when you're trying to kill 2 hours as well, because Naples, I'm sorry if there's anyone watching this from Naples, but Naples is a complete hole, at least in the centre around the train station. Rome it is not.
That's the same in a lot of places, though.
Yeah, I know.
Around Garden.
Yeah. I'm sure there are absolutely beautiful parts of it as well, but when you've only got a little bit short time to kill and you kind of wander around the vicinity of the main train station, it leads right down to a main sort of port area as well. It's a bit, I've seen some of the worst and the most amusing traffic jam I've ever watched, though. That kept me entertained for a few minutes. But yeah. Lovely trip with the family. So I've done some nice things, and it's taken up a bit of hobby time. But I'd rather go to Rome than paint toy soldiers. I don't say that very often about things, but it was cool fun, and it made me think about future wargaming things as well. I'm not going to start anything to do with Rome now, but at some point in the future, when I do, I will recall my the things I've seen. So it'll be really cool. Anyway, I think that's us sort of caught up in terms of what we've been doing in news and things. So we'll take a bit of a short break and we'll come back for our main topic about commission painting. Right, and we're back. So we're going to have a little chat about commission painting. We're saying our main topic. Our main topic is probably the rambles at the beginning. This will be a lot quicker, but a few weeks ago, it's probably 5 or 6 weeks ago now.
Yeah, getting on a while now.
We were watching The Painting Face, and we love the YouTube channel. I have a video podcast that I record in person, and they have some really interesting guests and things on. And they also did a video around commission painting, and how Chris Peach, as far as I'm aware, isn't a commission painter. He's obviously painted for years in the GW studio and hobby teams and all that kind of stuff. And they made a themed video about painting something from a commission and his thoughts on it. And it's a really, really good video. It talks about a lot of the themes and things that I'm very familiar with when you're trying to make time versus the money you make match up, and how long it actually takes. There was a point when he mentioned how much he'd set himself to earn per miniature, and when I worked it out per hour, I nearly myself, because it was so little money, I was just like, Dan, have you seen this? It's kind of crazy, but it led to a bit of a discussion between us, and we've talked about it before, about the different kinds of commission painters out there, how much they charge, and how difficult it is to get your pricing right, and for clients to you get such a wide range of clients that some people were willing to pay lots and lots of money for something, and other people don't quite understand the value of what you're asking them for. And I would say 2 in 10 people that contact me will walk away when I tell them a price. And it's generally polite, but some people are just like, whoa, I just had no idea it would be that expensive. And I'm not expensive. I'm probably mid-priced. But there's clearly a lot of people that kind of expect a miniature to be, a standard 28mm miniature to, you charge them £1 or £2 to paint it. And when you factor how long that takes and hourly rate, etc., that doesn't match. So it's always quite an interesting conversation. So we thought we'd just discuss it a little bit, let Dan fire some questions at me, get Dan's opinions and thoughts on it as well. But then also, you can put in the comments as well if you have any questions. I'm happy to sort of either follow up in another show or answer in the questions. And I can talk about a little bit my experiences and what I've learned over the 5+ years now that I've been working for myself, painting painting miniatures. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And most of them are around pricing too low and not setting myself enough time to do things. But before I sort of go on just onto a monologue, which will no doubt will happen at points, so apologies, Dan. What were you watched that video as well, and you don't paint for a living as such, but you also know how long things are. What were your initial thoughts on the video?
Well, I guess a lot of it depends on everything in the market for anything is based on perceived value, and it's only ever really worth what people will pay for it.
Yes.
So you have to go for that. I think some people's perspective of what's a fair amount of money to pay for other people's time, but I don't think that's constrained entirely to miniature wargame painting or indeed anything else. I mean, if you wanted to take it to a broader political thing, we talk about minimum wage and all that kind of stuff. But I do believe it actually minimum wage is a good point to bring up in this, because I don't actually think that Chris, at the amounts he set the money on for his age, actually hit minimum wage.
No, he wouldn't have been.
And he would have had materials costs and pay tax on it and everything else if it was his primary source of income.
Yes.
So we'll come to the maths in a bit. I'm not going to steal your thunder on that.
No, well, I've not got any prepared maths, so we can talk about it as and when. But
yes, but it's for me. I mean, without at the risk of sounding conceited, I've had people go, "Oh, would you paint stuff for me?" Or "Why don't you do it?" Because I can paint. And one principal reason is because I like painting and I don't want to hate it. And that would be one of the biggest problems for me.
Yeah.
Two, no one would be willing to pay my hourly wage that I earn in real life.
Yes.
To paint their miniatures, plus tax, plus costs, plus everything else. And to be fair, a reasonable amount, because if you want to turn my hobby into my job, then you're going to pay me a little extra for the misery. Let's be honest, because it's not what I want to do. And the last thing is, I wouldn't want to compromise on what I consider to be a standard at which I want to put my name to meet someone's budget.
Yeah,
which I'd imagine we'll come to, and I'd imagine that's something you. No,
that is definitely a thing. That is definitely a thing. It's hard. It's something he mentioned, wasn't it, about having to. I need to stop now. I can't do any more detail because I've set myself amount of time. That's not the way I work. I kind of work in reverse to that. But because he was doing it as an experiment, so rather than set a price for a miniature and when I run out of time, that's what you've done. I'm not saying that's what he was doing, but the way the story was told, that's how it works. I'm more likely to try and find out what a client needs, really explore their needs. It's so important to have those conversations to meet their expectation, because people will just throw around the word tabletop, and I do myself. In so many of my videos, I say the word tabletop, but that means so much. That's why I don't have any fixed set prices. On eBay,
isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's subjective.
So you start with a kind of a conversation around what are you expecting, what do you want, and then it's like, well, to do that, this is how long it will take me. Therefore, the price is this, and then I set that price. And if I overrun on time, then it's me that suffers from it, not the client. So there's no like the builder that I had to buy this extra materials. That doesn't happen in the way I run my business. I'm pretty sure most commission painters don't do that either. So yeah, that kind of having to leave detail off never happens as a time thing for me, but I get it totally from do I really want to? I have turned down jobs in the past that was a kind of someone just wanted a dipped army, or someone just wanted a basic colours, no washes or anything, and I'm just like, I could do it, but do I want to do it? I've had people ask me if I just build for them. I don't enjoy building. I could earn the money from doing it, but I've got enough other. I've got other. Well, it doesn't matter because you have to post pictures of it. But have I got other clients that I can? Is there work there? Yes, there is work there. And I'm usually booked up over a year in advance. Usually, not always. So I didn't have to. I can pick and choose a little bit about the kind of work I take and what I don't take. But I'm with you. There are times where I'd want to do more detail, but that's not what's been agreed. So I'm painting below a standard than I would do for myself. But sometimes that's nice as well, because you can't take forever on everything you do, and that bit is hard. But just getting that price right in the first place is hard, especially when there's new miniatures or things you've not painted before. Because you look at it and think, I think it will take me about this long, and then you get it, and it takes you longer. One of the things
Painted any buildings yet?
yeah, well, one of the things I get wrong all the time is underestimating how long it takes to assemble something, and that's also something that you can not come up against clients with in terms of they disagree with you, but also they're like, oh, and you want money for assembly, and I charge it separately because some clients will send me to choose then to assemble the miniature themselves. I always want them to sometimes because it takes forever, and sometimes the assembly can take longer than the painting, and sometimes it's specialist.
You're old school as well, because you'd have had original multi-part forged resin.
Yes, I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of that, and it does take a long time. Nicely, I'm doing a bit of heresy at the moment. I'm still been trickling through, and I'm starting to see more plastic tanks, and it's nice. It is a bit quicker, but it still takes a long time to do. So there's a lot of factors.
Cleaning mold lines, yeah. I mean, one good question: have you ever had an army commission for yourself?
No.
Have you ever approached anyone else?
No. I
suppose
I'm the worst advert for it. I couldn't have anyone else paint my miniatures. I like because I do paint and I enjoy painting. I want everything that I put on the table to be something that I have done myself. So I've probably mentioned this story before, but back in when would it have been? I've been playing War Machine 2nd edition at the time. I was playing in Cheltenham at Cheltenham War Chiefs, and I played against a guy a lot called Russ Charles, Russ went on to design the original Conflict 47 stuff, and he set up that company. And then he went on, at the time when I first was friends with him, he was a teacher still, and he started it in his room, and he went on to be freelance, and he did work with Steamforge, so he did, what's it called? What's the football game called? One based on sort of Guild Ball. Yeah, he's designed for Privateer Press, lots of War Machine stuff. He does loads of things, and he is an incredible award-winning painter. Has been in White Dwarf and stuff as well. Anyway, he offered to paint a miniature for me as a birthday present, and I said no. And he was an amazing painter, and I was a lot worse then. And he's still better than I am now, that many years on. And it was just like, really, thank you for the kind offer, but I still want to paint this miniature for myself. So it just illustrates that. So I am, I'm not the greatest art advert. I'm saying don't ask someone like me to do your army for you. But there are people that don't enjoy. There's enough people out there that really don't enjoy painting, and they want to play the game first and foremost, or don't have the time, and the game is more important to them. And I'd say most of my clients are people that are more interested in the game and or don't have time, and they're not so emotionally connected to their own miniatures. There are some that just can do both, because we are humans, we are all different, we all find different motivations. But I've never asked anyone else to do it, and I don't think I would. Not for a personal army. I'm trying to think of a scenario where I would. So let's go into Dreamland. 10 years down the line, Miniature Realms YouTube channel is as big as Tabletop Tactics, and I'm employing people to make videos. Then yeah, because I'd need them for studio armies kind of things. I'm not interested in doing that, by the way, people. But in terms of my own personal collection, the most exciting parts of wargaming for me are his lore stroke history. So it comes under the same thing, depending whether it's historical or fantasy. And that's all the research, that's stories, that's watching documentaries, etc., etc. And then it's the collecting the army and painting it, and the choosing what I'm going to buy. All that is my most important part. I like playing games, but that is the last part on the list of the way I like to do it. So yeah, getting someone else to paint my army would take away my most fun thing. All right, very long-winded answer to that.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, I did once. Obviously, I had the Night Lord army for Heresy. I initially approached Miles, Little Legend, because I wanted them nice. And he is, I would say, fairly priced, but he is definitely not cheap. He is definitely at that top end of prices, certainly within the Heresy community. And I'm glad it was so expensive, because it made me paint them myself, because I can paint. And actually, I kind of became reinvigorated and fell in love with painting again, because at the time I was working a lot and I was busy, and I thought, my time's worth more than my money. Turns out it wasn't. But I'm quite glad, because I think for about 3,000 point army, I think he quoted me, I don't think I'd have much change out, about $4,000.
Yeah. Which
is not a cheap prospect. And that's not including the miniatures.
Yeah.
So I think I was probably going to be on the hook for about $6,000 all in. And I thought, you know what, for that, I'll paint them.
Yeah, that
So I did.
makes total sense. And that, I suppose that brings us nicely on to maybe types of commission painter and business out there.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to list anyone's prices. I don't know many people's prices, but there's really big studios overseas, and I think they have cheaper labour, so they are able to offer a certain price. And then
There's
there
a big
are,
crew over in Poland, isn't there?
I think there is, yeah.
I can't remember who they are,
Is it
but
Den of
they're supposed to
Imagination
be
or
really
something
good.
like that? It might be.
Yeah, that's the one.
And they produce nice enough stuff. And I don't know what the prices are like, but I imagine they might be a little bit cheaper. Then you've got big companies like Siege Studios, which have a lot of people working for them and a lot of people that kind of subcontracted, I believe. That's the way they do it.
Yeah.
And they are towards the higher end of pricing. We've seen some examples in a conversation on the Great British Hobby League about that as well. And while I don't charge that much, I can understand why they would charge a lot. They run it, as a professional business where they're paying employees, hopefully a decent hourly rate, and they're trying to make money, and they got the cost of income. Once you start adding those things in and run it as a proper business, actually the prices do get quite expensive. And that will come back to that moment, because I think that brings back to that market value versus what people are prepared to pay versus, I'm not sure it always matches what people, I think sometimes commission painting isn't viable. And I imagine that there's a vast chunk of the industry, it's not really an industry, is kept alive by people that have other means, or it's not their main thing. So the reason I've been able to do it for so long is my wife earns very well, and we had children, and one of us needed to stop doing the job we were doing because we were both in management positions that required us driving around hundreds of miles each day. I was covering sort of southwestern Wales with the job I was doing. Emma's a regional manager for the job she does. We couldn't do that and have children. One of us had to sort of go to the school hours, and one further to start with, pretty much not work. So for me, it gave us a second income that was flexible. Would I be doing this if we didn't have kids? Probably not. And that's not saying you can't do it, because there were clearly people that have gone out and made a huge success of it, a la people like Siege Studios that have built this business. But you have to run it as a huge business. And I was always lucky enough that that because I was a secondary income for the family, if something happened on a given month and I was paid late or not paid, and that's another risk you take when you do it for yourself, we would be okay. We would miss my money if it doesn't arrive for a long period of time, but we have some flexibility where we're okay. And then I think you've got everything else sort of in between and below as well. So you have the guy at the club that will paint your miniatures for, just because he likes doing them, or because you'll buy him a box of miniatures and then he'll do it. And when you work out the hourly rate, it's nothing. It works out as 50p an hour or something, but they don't care because they haven't got a lot of money and you've paid some hobby for them. And that's viable. Are they a commission painter, or are they just some bloke at the club that's painted it for you?
I did that for the 30k channel. Yeah. I painted his AT box yesterday with Brains, and I literally did it. I said, whatever I paint, you give me one of.
Yeah.
Which, but that was, I don't count as commission painting. It was an
arrangement
that favour.
Yeah. And at
the time he was helping us out with the hall for the Run Heresy events. It was community effort.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And there's also commission painters that people do it as a little extra job. So they will take on a project, and then they might not think of that in terms of hourly rate quite as much. Some may do, but I know that plenty that don't. They will take it on as I'm going to do this army and I'm going to get X amount of money, and they're thinking of what they're spending that money on. They're thinking of it almost converted it directly into hobby, rather than thinking about what they could earn if they went and worked a second job for an hourly rate, because it's something enjoyable that they'll happily do, even effectively below minimum wage, because they're getting something out of it. So they're enjoying what they do, painting an army, and they're getting extra toys. So there are lots of different levels. But I know
Wanless does that. He assembles.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and he just sits there with his wife of an evening. They watch telly as you do, and he just builds miniatures and he makes a bit of money on the side out of it.
Exactly. And I think that we talked about it in the previous shows, haven't we, about the cottage industry. Aside from Games Workshop and a couple of big things, the wargaming world, especially the historical wargaming world, is just a collection of one-man or two-man bands. It's cottage industries, and I think it's the same with a lot of commission painters. If we had a list of all the commission painters in the world, I would be surprised if 95% of them weren't people that just did it as a little extra here and there. And then you've got some people that have sort of turned it into a bit more of a job like mine, and then you've got some of the really big names that can charge big money, and big studios on top as well. So there's lots of different levels. And if you're looking for a commission painter, bear those things in mind, because you might not be able to afford X, but the amount of money you can afford, you find is agreeable at Y, so to speak.
They say you can have good, quick, or cheap. Pick two.
Yes, yeah, I've heard that a lot, and that might not always follow. If you've got mates that do it, you could end up with those things for a bargain price, and some people do. But it does lead to problem. I would never say that people can't go and do what they want. I've got commission painter friends that in the past bemoan the club painter a bit, because you'll get a client that comes to you and they'll say, I want this army doing, and you quote them £1,000, for example, and they think, well, no, that's £100 worth of work to them in their head. It's because they've got that mindset of X pounds a model. And I think some of the danger of upsetting people, but you used to get painting services on the back of a lot of historical magazines, and they would have their prices. So they do one standard, and it works better for maybe Napoleonic troops from minifigs back in the 80s and 90s than it does maybe for a Space Marine these days, but they'll have a set price painted standard, and that was always a very low cost per miniature. And that's not the way I work. I'm very much really chat to the client about what standard they want, what level of detail, what miniatures are they, and it's not just down to the miniature, it's down to the paint scheme as well. What techniques am I going to have to use? Am I painting colours that are easy and quick to do? How much complexity? All these things I will try and factor into. How long is it going to take me? Materials a little bit, yep, absolutely. That kind of gets added on at the end.
Cost more than others. If you're going to have to start using specialised techniques and buy colour shift paint and all that,
it's incredibly hard to factor in the cost of paint. I'm sure someone like CGU, I don't do it too much. I tend to get it right enough about the hourly rate thing. That's the most important thing for me, is to get my hourly rate thing down, because the actual percentages of mils of paint I will use isn't always noticeable, apart from the few main things. But you were right, you are using all those things. I'm using electricity at home, got lights on all the time. There are lots of things to take into account if you really, really want to take it super seriously. I'm a sole trader. I haven't set up a separate business to do it, so I have to do my tax returns every year, and I do it as a sole trader. It's the simplest way of doing it. I probably could get it more complicated, and make it a limited company at some point, and then it would be easier for me to write off other costs and things and buy things for the business rather than under me. But I'm not a tax expert, and this works for me as it is at the moment. But there are a number of things to think of if you are there's quite a few new commission painters that contact me and ask me for advice. And some of the things basic advice I give them is chat to them via Facebook Messenger and things, by all means, but when you agree a price and stuff, get an email, almost write a formalised email out, even if it's not an invoice as such. Make it all laid out, the full expectations, all agreed. This is how much it's going to cost. They've agreed to this example. You've given them an example of this miniature painted by yourself on this date, and the picture, they want that standard, and just make sure it's all recorded what they've covered. And I've not had any issues really in 5 years. Really, really haven't. I've had one client that was unhappy with something, and it was still very amicable. And other than that, I've not had issues. I've heard people have had absolute nightmares, and some of it is absolutely not their fault. But I do everything I can to mitigate that beforehand. And it's only when I work for someone a lot, that I get to a stage where it's a lot more relaxed in terms of just messaging them and things. And that's I've had clients for 5 years now that come back again and again. Maybe then I don't always send them a formal invoice on an email because we've known each other, but there are lots of things. But anyway, if we go back to the kind of original point of that video, I think it was like looking at maybe £2-3 a miniature, and that's so far. The reason my jaw dropped was because it's so far below what I can imagine charging anyone. I think even the cheapest I would charge someone for a 28mm miniature now would be more likely £10, because it's very, very hard to paint any miniature if you think from start to finish. in less to a decent standard with. Generally, I'm doing it at least with some level of highlights and things. And you look at what minimum wage in the UK is, and I want to earn more than that, and I do set myself above a minimum wage target, not loads, but a fair few pounds above that. It just isn't affordable. And some people, that's just like, well, I'm never going to pay 10, 15, 20 pounds a miniature, and that's cool. But all I'll say, if you are looking at commission painters, if they do ask for that kind of money, it's because how long would it take you to do that yourself? And would it take you more than an hour to paint that? So if they're asking you something that's, just above minimum wage, or maybe a minimum wage and a half again, maybe it's not as expensive as you think. They're just asking you for to be properly covered for the hours of the work they do. Alone the skill and all the other things that come into that as well. The research you have to do.
You pay for the years.
Yeah, you do. That's another factor. And you pay for the research that goes in. You're defining the paint schemes, often the historical research that's needed to match certain uniforms and things. There's work that goes into it.
You learning how to use a brush without sticking it in your eye over the course of the last however many years. That's what they're paying for.
Yeah.
When you essentially go to, and I view commission painting, and this may upset a few people, in much the same way as any skilled trade. It requires learning techniques, muscle memory, forming a basis of knowledge, art theory in a lot of it, color theory, working out how to best process. How is that much different to learning how to lay a brick? Yeah. It's not. And yet for some reason people accept paying 20 or 30 pound an hour to a brickie, but they won't to you. Sorry. It's not much different.
It's because it's like the same way as we get regarded as gamers. Yeah, the same way we're regarded as what you're doing playing with toy soldiers. That bleeds over a little bit into, are we doing a serious trade or a serious job from some people. And that's from people within our community. And I suppose some of that is because it's even harder for them to swing to their other halves. How much are you paying them to do what for you? What you're paying them to paint your miniatures, and it just doesn't. My wife all the time will say, wow, you got X for doing that. She knows how long it takes me, and don't get me, I get it in the ear if something's taking me too long, because she'll go, how much are they paying you for that? Well, that's taking you a bit longer than expected, because she's well aware of hourly rates. But at the same time, she'll also say, people really pay that for painting toy soldiers, and that's where the non-gamer prejudice comes in a little bit. And I think that's part of the reason why some people just balk at the cost of some commission painters, or even medium price ones. As I say, I don't have too many issues with that. Most people will come along and say, oh, it's about what I expected. Well, that's fair enough. And it's about right. But that's where I've made the most mistakes, is pricing. And it's still something I continually kind of have to learn. And maybe go 3 years down the line and you're setting up a bill for a returning customer, and you realise you're charging them the same amount you were 3 years ago. And you think, well, actually, probably could ask a bit more now. I'm not quite going to add the inflation rates that they are there in the UK at the moment, but it's that's the thing I have to challenge myself on, and that's because I'm quite a nice bloke most of the time, and I don't like to ask for people for too much money. So that's something I constantly learn, and when it comes to assembly and cleanup and things, as much as I charge it separately, I still repeatedly undercharge versus how long it actually takes me to do it. But again, it's a tricky one. So if you're thinking about being a commission painter, bear all those things in mind. If you're doing it just as an extra hobby thing, don't worry too much. Just as long as you're happy with what you're being paid for and you're enjoying what you're doing, that's cool. But if you want to do it as a proper income, you've really got to think of it as a job, and think about how much you're earning per hour after all your costs taken off as well. Obviously we're all taxed for our earnings, but if you do it properly, you will have to do a tax return as well, and the taxman will take that chunk there. So you need to make sure you hit that minimum wage once your costs are taken off. Obviously you get taxed as normally would in there after that anyway, but it's definitely a bit of an eye opener when you do the odd project that goes wrong.
Well, yeah, and obviously they'll come for you once a year, or if you're really unlucky, they'll do you 6 months behind and 6 months in front if you had enough money.
No, I'm not.
PAYE is easy, isn't it? But paying your own taxes is hard.
It is, yeah, and it's never too hard for me to do. To be honest with you, because jobs tend to be a month, or maybe 2 clients in a month, maximum 3. I suppose I very rarely have more than 3 clients in a month. There's not that many by the end of the year. It's, if it was like a retail store and you've got loads of different incomes to kind of, there's less receipts to work out in terms of money coming in. I suppose where I'm bad is making sure that I cost everything going out, because so much of it I buy stuff and then use it for my own hobby anyway, and I lose that receipt, or I don't remember to include it. So I probably could put stuff more through the business, but that's not the most interesting part of the conversation. I don't know if I'd love to hear other people's comments on it, any questions people have, anything we haven't covered. We try to do it respectfully, because people, as I say, commission painters will charge different amounts. There are some out there that even I think, whoa, that's expensive, but you know, that they're up to them to charge what they want, and if people are willing to pay it, that's cool. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I try to stay away with saying too much what prices I charge, because it genuinely is bespoke, even though a lot of things do end up in and about the same kind of price. I have guidelines I work from, but yeah, I try to stay from individual pricing, other than the odd little example, because it just gets a little bit compare-ish. I don't want to be sort of calling people out and stuff, but it's definitely an interesting topic always, and hopefully people will find it interesting. Right, Dan, have you got anything else you'd like to add on the topic of commission painting, or anything else for that matter?
Well, obviously, I would recommend my colleague for all commission painting needs. I've heard he's quite reasonable.
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Taking bookings for next year as it stands. So yeah, thanks very much.
Don't ask me.
He's an amazing painter, but he just won't do it for you.
Nope.
Not interested. Not interested. So as it stands, we thank you for all the topic ideas that people have been sending in. We've been writing lots down. We are fairly flexible with it, so it may well be that we think we're going to do a topic and then something will come up, some news or something. And this is partly why we talked about this today, because we had quite a long discussion about it when it first happened, and that was probably weeks and weeks ago now because of things. And there have been other things since then. You know, we were asked whether we wanted to discuss Midwinter Mini's take on historical wargaming, and we decided to probably dodge that one, because I think there's been some really good responses to it, and I think we all know where we sit with that. For what it's worth, because someone asked my direct opinion on it, I'm not dragging Dan into this. For what it's worth, I don't think they quite meant to say what they said. I think there's a lot of naivety there from people that don't know the topic. I wonder if they picked a bulk hatching video because they had that sponsorship for the bizarrely the boat World War II game, and they wanted to put the advert in some content that matched it. So maybe that's why they did bolt action. But I got a feeling they just didn't really think through what they were saying, and maybe now regret it. I don't know, but I don't think
they afforded it perhaps the respect the topic deserved. I think that's my take from it. They, off the cuff, quite flippantly said some stuff because it maybe covered their obligations to something they'd already agreed to. And I don't think they gave it the respect the topic deserved.
No, I think they may have. What they were talking about was maybe their own kind of feeling towards it. They felt uneasy, maybe. They were talking to themselves about it and thought, you know what, I feel a bit uneasy playing the Germans in this. Is that right?
No, icky
and then
was the word,
yeah,
they said icky,
an ick. People have an ick.
It's not a...
And I wonder whether they turned their own uncomfortableness of it into, and that's an acceptable thing for people to be uncomfortable. In the historical wargaming scene, there's all kinds of debate on how modern you should play. So for those of us in the historical gaming scene, that's a valid question. Some people won't play moderns because it's too new. And there's on Instagram are beautifully painted armies, but there's some Ukrainian armies out there at the moment, modern conflict. And for me, that's just, I don't like that either. That's not what I'd be interested in playing. I'm not really interested in any modern. Maybe Vietnam is the most modern I would. So we all have our own level of what's acceptable, and maybe for them they thought they still felt a little bit, maybe World War II is a bit much for them.
Spectre, that's some of the stuff for that awesome looking. But yeah,
just not.
especially if you're taking reference photos, and someone in one of those reference photos might have snuffed it last week or something.
It's not for me, and I'm not going to get into it in terms of judging people because I have not looked into it or thought about it enough to make a proper thing. All I'm just using it as an example of, I wonder whether they didn't really think about the topic. They just thought about maybe some of their own initial thoughts. They didn't get into it too much and made some silly comments. And there was quite rightly a bit of a backlash about it, and they would have heard about it. They've not addressed it, which is probably the best thing to do. Let it go. I'd watched the channel a bit, and they're not known for being controversial. That's not their thing. So that's why I afford them the benefit of the doubt a little bit. I don't think some other people out there that would have been surprised if they came out with that stuff for views and stuff. Maybe they were, but I didn't agree with them. I just thought, that's a bit of a shame, really. But we probably talked about it more than we planned to there. But hopefully that's not upset anyone from either side of the debate. Anyway, should we let the good people go now, Dan? We are more than a hobby hour again, but not quite as a hobby hour, 2 hours as we were last time. So we are just over this time round. So thank you very much for watching again. Please continue to send us in your requests for topics. We will continue adding to the list. You never know, we might even do one of them one day. We haven't planned our next one in yet, so hopefully in a week to 10 days we'll do another one, maybe 2 weeks. Whatever takes us at the time, maybe there'll be some new topic or something we want to discuss. Maybe we'll delve into the list. But thank you very much for watching us. Take care, and we'll catch you soon.